Everyone here ready to go? I will call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for June 22nd, 2020. At this time, I will look for roll call. I'll look to Commissioner Blakey for that. I'm sorry, Director Blakey for that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Britton.
Here.
Bigham.
Here.
Frazier.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Meadow.
Here.
Rasmussen. Do not see Rasmussen on the call. And Kambata.
Here. At this time, I will look for approval of the agenda. I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Frazier.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Britton.
We have a second from Commissioner Britton. Director Boyke, if you could do roll call.
Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Bigham.
Aye.
Frazier.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Rasmussen. And Kambata.
Aye. At this time, we will move to open forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak on behalf of an item that is not already on tonight's agenda. If anyone would like to speak, raise issue with anything, this would be their time to do so. I'll give a few minutes here for anyone to pop in. All right, I'm not seeing anyone in the Q&A or the chat, so we'll move on to item number 5. Chair's explanation of the hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the Commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for the public record, anyone wishing to speak can do so in one of two ways. Post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address the questions accordingly. The second option would be to use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call on you by name and ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you will be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of the meeting. The first step in the hearing process will be for staff to present a summary of the report. The applicant will then have the opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comment. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to the public comments. The Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. The agenda packet is available for viewing on the City of Cottage Grove website. The City Council will act on these items at their meeting Wednesday, July 15th, 2020, which starts at 7 p.m. Moving on to item 6.1, we've got Schommer Accessory Structure, case V2020-035, with John Burbank presenting.
All right, Mr. Chair, John's going to be utilizing my computer tonight, so let me just pull it up here and we'll get started. There we go. Should just be able to use arrows.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Gail and Tom Schommer have made a request to vary from the bluff line setback requirement of 100 feet on 11870 Lockridge Avenue, 11710 Lockridge Avenue. 840 square foot detached accessory structure. And again, they're proposing it to be 50 feet, and the bluff line setback is 100 feet.
John, could we have you, I'm having a little trouble hearing you there.
So, can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay. Tom and Gail Schommer have made application for a bluff line setback variance at 11710 Lockridge Avenue South.
I don't even know if I'm on.
You're not, I don't think. You can hear it, but you must not have hit something right.
I'm looking at it, at their thing, but I don't know.
Is this Tom and Gail? We can, if you could hit mute until we get to the open forum, that would be great.
That's not us.
David, is that you?
Someone else.
Yes, this is me.
Are you able to mute yourself, please?
Mute. Oh, I will try.
Let's see. There we go. All right. Thank you.
So this is a single family residence, and the back portion of their lot is extremely steep, a ravine that feeds into the Mississippi River. Again, looking at the site, it's south of Highway 61 and in the Pine Coulee Countrywood neighborhood. So the bluff line is identified in red on the ortho photo. And again, you can see the very tight contour lines depicting that's an extreme slope. So they're requesting to place their 840 square foot detached accessory structure 50 feet from the bluff line when 100 foot is the current ordinance criteria. In 2016, the state statutes were changed related to the Mississippi River critical area, which this property is located in. And that setback reduction, or that setback distance, was reduced from 100 feet to 40 feet. And the city has till the end of 2021 to update its ordinance. So eventually our ordinance will read 40-foot setback versus 100. But 100 is on the books right now, so we need to have the variance request processed because of the deviation. The proposed structure is to be located 20 feet off of the side property line. Again, 50 feet from the bluff line. And after that, it gets extremely wooded and goes down into the ravine. There are mature trees on the property that limit locations. The septic system is located in the backyard, so you have to work around that in terms of placement of the structure. There's an existing 12 by 12 structure that is older and is also closer to the bluff line than what is allowed. So the red stake in the foreground is one of the septic lines. There's a white stake in the middle of the yard by the wood pile, and that's one of the corners of the building. And then there's two stakes along that tree line depicting the 20-foot side yard setback and where the wall of the structure would be located. This is a picture of the applicant's home, and one of the things the ordinance requires is that it be similar in color, design, and materials to the principal structure. So they will have to design the finished component of their building to match that architecture. Here's a drawing of the buildings, of the building. Some overhead doors, some man doors, and some windows on the project. With findings of fact, the size is less than the permitted accessory structure footage of 2,000 square feet. Grading and erosion control measures will be required to protect the bluff line from erosion and other negative impacts. The applicant is proposing to utilize the property in a reasonable manner by constructing an accessory structure on a large single-family residential property. The property consists of unique circumstances not created by the property owners. And locating the accessory structure outside of the 100-foot setback and behind the principal structure faces other conflicts with mature trees, septic areas, and the required setbacks. The minimum proposed and permitted size of the accessory structure is not inconsistent with the size of other detached accessory structures in the neighboring surrounding area, and the buffer line setback distance will not be will be reduced in the near future. So with that, we are recommending that you hold a public hearing and recommend that the City Council approve the variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Burbank. Would the applicant like to add anything to the information that was already provided?
No, that was covered pretty clearly, I think, for us.
Okay. Questions or comment from the commission members? All right, seeing none, this time we will proceed to public hearing. Just a quick reminder for everyone, you've got the following options for raising questions regarding the public hearing. Attendees can ask in one of two ways. You can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address the question accordingly. You may use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call you by name and ask the question. To ask the question, please understand that once the question is asked, you'll be muted. If you have any follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. With that, I will open public hearing. And we'll see if we've got any takers. I'll give just another minute longer here. See if anyone pops in. All right. Seeing no inquiries, I'll go ahead and close public hearing. At this time, I would look for further comment from the commission. Okay. I've got one quick question for the applicants. With regard to the 100-foot setback versus the 50-foot setback, have you guys taken into account the possibility of erosion? And per your application, what specific steps were you going to take to prevent further erosion?
Yeah, the slope where we're asking to build the building is ahead of that a ways, and the property does go up in the back, so the drainage would come forward from that. Mr. Burbank had an engineer out with him and looked at it, and I believe they said it would be fine. And that was when we were proposing to put the building back further than we are now. So we've had some changes because of it fitting. So we moved it ahead from where we originally had it. But at that time, even I believe John and the engineer thought that was going to work out. Okay.
And then regarding the more forward frontage of the lot, there were some mature trees there that were an obstacle to moving this any further forward in front of the septic system, correct?
Yes, they are a couple ash, but I think only one may be removed. I'm not sure that that'll even have to take place, but. And then there was three in the original plan. There was a box elder and two elms that were, I think they were like 9-inch across. They weren't huge trees, but they might be close enough in the digging that they could be affected by it.
Okay. Okay.
On the back end of it.
Thank you. Do we have any additional question or comment from the members of the commission? Okay, at this time, I would look for a motion.
Commissioner Frazier, I'd make a motion to approve the variance subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Bigham.
We have a second from Commissioner Bigham. So motion to approve subject to the stipulations stipulated in the staff report and findings of fact. All in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to Director Boyke for a roll call.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Britton,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Knable,
Aye.
and Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 6.2, AT&T antennas on Meadowgrass Water Tower, case CUP 2020-032, with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I hope everyone can hear me all right. If not, certainly let me know. The request before you this evening, as you mentioned, is AT&T. They're actually looking just for an amendment to their existing conditional use permit, which will allow for the replacement of some equipment as well as the addition of some equipment on the Meadowgrass Water Tower. The tower is located just north of 70th Street. I believe the bike park is to the south of 70th Street. It's located in the Pine Summit development. The initial approval for the AT&T equipment on the tower at this Meadowgrass location was in 1999. So that included the construction of an equipment shelter, which sits within the outlot, as well as additional equipment on top of the water tower as well. The most recent amendment to this CUP for additional equipment was in 2002. So with their current request, AT&T is looking to mostly swap out antennas, so no additional antennas, but they are looking to add about 9 new radios, which typically go, it's my understanding, on those antennas. So they're adding some additional radios. There will be some new coax cable. I know we just recently had similar requests in the past, so I'll just clarify that cable will run up out the outside of the water tower. It will be painted to match the water tower, so we make sure that we don't have an eyesore running up and down that tower at Meadowgrass. For this particular request, AT&T also needs to install an entire brand new handrail around the entire top of the water tower. And this was the request of our engineer team, who insisted that it needed to be engineered to support the equipment that is there, plus the additional radios that will be added on top of there. And then I'll just make note, this request will also require an amendment to the lease agreement between the city and AT&T, which is currently in the works with our legal staff as well. So with that, I will leave you with the recommendation, and of course, we'll stand for any questions if need be.
Thank you, Emily. Is the applicant here this evening, and would they like to add anything to the application or to the information provided?
No, I believe everything was covered with Emily's presentation.
Perfect. Thank you. Do any of the members of the commission have any questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay. Just check Q&A here. All right. Well, then with that, we will open public hearing. Prior to opening public hearing, I will read this statement again. In order to ask a question, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address the questions accordingly. You may also use the raise my hand option if you wish to verbally ask a question. Please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call on you by name and have you ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you will be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. With that, we will open the public hearing on this matter. And I'm not seeing anyone popping in here. Give it one more minute. All right, at this time, we will close public hearing. Any additional questions or comment from the commission? At this time, I will look for a motion.
I move this to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report. Commissioner Britton.
All right, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Britton. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Frazier.
I have a second from Commissioner Frazier. On the motion to approve, subject to the stipulations stated in the staff report, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to Director Boyke for a roll call.
All right, Commissioner Britton,
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Knable,
Aye.
and Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 6.3, Up North Plastics, cases SP 2020-033 and CUP 2020-034, with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, again, the item before you this evening is Up North Plastics. They have a site plan review and amendment to their conditional use permit, looking to add an additional access to their site, as well as construction of a garden building and weigh station off of Ideal Avenue. So if you're not familiar, Up North Plastics is located within the city's business park. This is Ideal Avenue. As I indicated, they are just north of 95th Street and just west of Jamaica Avenue. If you recall, the newly approved United Rentals location is located just to the west of the Up North. I'm going to call it their campus out there. So just a brief little background. The actual original building, it's my understanding, was constructed in 1965, somewhere along 95th Street. Up North then occupied in 1985. And of course, since that time, multiple amendments to their CUP and their site out there, with some larger and smaller additions at the site. The most recent, if you do recall, was in 2018. They were approved for, I believe it was a 428,000 square foot expansion out there. Quite a large building, some additional silos on the site, as well as some railroad spurs coming off the Canadian Pacific Railroad access to the site as well. Again, some additional employee parking spaces and things of that nature with that expansion. So with that expansion, Up North Plastics has indicated there will be potentially an additional 500 trips to that site as a part of the expansion, therefore requesting that additional access off of Ideal. And I'm actually going to go back a couple of slides just to, again, orientate you to where Ideal Avenue is. Again, it is on the west side of the site. So when we're looking at this image for the proposed access, you at least have a good idea of where that is on the site. Again, it will be a truck entrance, truck exit, 2 lanes, 1 way in, 1 way out. The guard building will be constructed just back into the site. There'll be a canopy that will overhang over the weigh station for those trucks that are, again, entering and exiting the site. The applicant has indicated this will hopefully alleviate some of these additional truck traffic off of 95th. They will retain those existing accesses off of 95th, but of course this will help to spread it across the site with their expansion. So again, in 2018, as a part of their expansion, Up North was required to install some additional plantings throughout their site to again create a good curb appeal from 95th Street and Jamaica Avenue. As a part of their proposed, there's about, I'm going to say 7 to 8 coniferous trees that were on that approved landscape plan that will have to be moved per se. So they've indicated that they will move over to the at the corner of 95th and Jamaica Avenue. They'll disperse those coniferous trees in that area, which staff has indicated is an excellent location. Again, creating that beautiful landscape buffer that does actually exist out there to continue to maintain that. The architecture for the proposed GAR building will align exactly with the existing building that is out at the site, as well as the proposed new 428,000 square foot building on the site with the brick knee wall and then the blue steel on the top. Again, we'll align on the site. Everything will come together quite nicely. On this image, you can kind of see, I suppose, right about in here is maybe, of course, certainly guesstimating here, but kind of in between the existing and the new building is where that smaller structure will be for that guardhouse. So with that, I will leave you with the recommendation. I will stand for questions. I also believe Perry Haynes with Up North is on the call if you do have direct questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to contribute any additional information to the presentation?
No, I think Emily did a great job.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from members of the commission? Okay. With that, I will just check here, make sure no one else popped up in the background with a question. All right, with that, we will open public hearing. In order to ask a question, you have one of two options. You can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address the question accordingly. You may use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call on you by name to ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you will be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. And with that, we will open public hearing on this matter. I'm not seeing anyone pop up here, so we'll give it one more minute. All right, we'll go ahead and close public hearing. Any follow-up questions from the commission? I have a quick question for staff. With regard to Ideal Avenue and that it terminates shortly thereafter the proposed entrance here, how does that affect future traffic flows for that site? And does it have the potential to have any negative impact on future traffic flows?
Chair Gambata, members of the commission, are you talking about the cul-de-sac?
Yep. Is there any long-term plan to extend that down to the rail line, or is that where Ideal Avenue is going to terminate for perpetuity?
Yes, Chair Gambata, that is where that will end. There's no plans to continue. As a part of Up North's expansion, this is the employee parking location here, and then the additional expansion. And again, this rough sketch here, but just so you can get a visual. So there's no plans to extend, so traffic would not be impacted by the proposed additional access.
Thank you. That's my question. Further questions from commission? Okay, seeing none, at this time I will look for a motion.
Motion from Commissioner Bigham, subject to the recommendation provided.
Commissioner Bigham has a motion to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Bigham. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Britton.
Commissioner Britton, second. On the motion to approve, subject to the stipulations stated in the staff report, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to Director Boyke for a roll call.
All right, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Combato.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 6.4, Wolterstrorff property grading permit, case CUP 2020-037, with John Burbank presenting.
All right, 1 second here as I start the slideshow. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Frattle and Companies, on behalf of Wolterstrorff Limited Partnership, has applied for a conditional use permit to import over 100,000 cubic yards of gravel and fill onto the Wolterstrorff property located north of Lake Robert and west of Jamaica Avenue. So here's an image of the site. There's 2 fill areas proposed north of the future Ravine Parkway and south of the Ravine Parkway outside of the wetland buffer areas of Lake Robert. Here they are detailed in this graphic. Over the course of 1 year, they'd have the ability to haul up to 150,000 cubic yards of material. It's black dirt and gravel. The permit would expire on June 1st, 2022. We are recommending a maximum height of 30 feet for the stockpiles with 3-to-1 max slopes, and then that they reseed those stockpiles per their NPDES permit requirements. With that amount of material being moved, engineering reports that will be 10 to 15,000 truck trips over the course of that year. Jamaica Avenue is designed to accommodate the proposed truck traffic. No issues were identified by the public works staff. Temporary rock pad entrances required. If materials hauled onto the public roadway, they would be required to have that swept up. And then because it is a county roadway now, again, it would be recommended that they get a Washington County temporary access right-of-way permit. As with all types of grading activities, the erosion control measures would be required. They'd have to follow the city's erosion control sediment control standards. The site would be inspected by the city. And then they do need to get their NPDES permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, and then all the practices as detailed in that permit and as directed by the city engineer. We are recommending that the Planning Commission take 2 actions. The first is hold a public hearing, and the second is to approve the conditional use permit to import up to 150,000 cubic yards of environmentally clean gravel and black dirt onto the Wolterstrorff property north of Lake Robert and west of Jamaica Avenue, subject to conditions. I did see that the applicant, the property owner, is online if you have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burbank. Would the applicant like to add any commentary to the presentation? Okay. Seeing none, do any of the commission members have any additional questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, at this time, we will open public hearing. In order to ask a question, you can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address the questions accordingly. You may use the raise my hand option if you wish to verbally ask a question. Please test your device's microphone prior to selecting raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call on you by name to ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you'll be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect raise my hand option to ask additional questions. With that, we will open public hearing. Okay, seeing none, I'll give it one more minute here. All right. With that, we will go ahead and close public hearing. Further questions or comment from the commission? I had a question for staff regarding the amount of fill and how it is going to impact stormwater mitigation. Is there a plan to have a designated stormwater retention pond, or I imagine that much fill is going to change the natural watershed of the property, and I'm curious how we plan to mitigate that and keep that that on site.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is Amanda Meyer, Assistant City Engineer. We will not be requiring any temporary basins at this point since it is just stockpiling material. They are filling in an existing hole, if you will, but it's just stockpiling material. So they'll just have to follow erosion control measures that will be set forth through their construction stormwater permit, their NPDES permit, to make sure that there's no erosion off-site. But other than that, we would not be requiring any on-site stormwater mitigation.
Okay. And what's the practice for staff and city to monitor that? And then at any point in the future, would the city be able to implement that if it was necessary?
Yeah, I would think we could implement it if necessary. As part of the applicant's NPDES permit, they will be required to do weekly inspections of their site for erosion. I believe it's once every 7 days. And then within a half-inch rainfall, I believe they have to be doing inspections of their site from an erosion control perspective. And definitely city staff can do additional inspections if necessary, if we feel that there's concerns. And then if need be, we can always reevaluate if basins would be required.
Okay, and per the stipulations in the CUP, if further action was needed, we'd have recourse to implement that without having to take another legislative action.
I would have to take a look through our recommendations. You want to give me just a minute here?
Sure.
I think through, excuse me, with recommendation number 15, we do have, the city has the authority to revise the grading permit if on-site conditions or changing conditions make the original grading permit ineffective. And through that grading permit, we do have different stipulations that the applicant has to follow with that grading permit. So I would think through that, if something were to change on site that requires, additional changes, we could do so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, too, this is Ben Boyd, Community Development Director. As with all CUPs, the Council and Planning Commission, direction of Council, has the ability to review an existing CUP and potentially revoke. So if there were any issues in the future, and for example, if staff couldn't remedy it through an administrative review or administrative process, we have the ability to bring that conditional use permit back for review to Council. So just wanted to note that as well.
Perfect. That answers my question. Additional questions from the commission? Okay. I guess seeing no additional comment from the commission, I would look for a motion at this time.
Commissioner Frazier, I'd make a motion to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions in the staff report.
I have a motion to approve the application subject to the stipulations stated in the staff report from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Britton.
Second from Britton. On the motion to approve subject to the stipulations stated in the staff report, all those signify by saying aye. Wait, let me back that up real quick. We've got a motion and a second. Do we have any additional comment? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and I'll look to Director Boyke for a roll call.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 6.5. Accessory apartment rental tax, 6.5, accessory apartment rental text amendment case TA 2020-036 with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. Again, this is our final item of the evening. Ultimately, a quick text amendment, too fast there, to kind of align our zoning code with our rental license code. So just a little bit of background. In 2017, we actually went through and reviewed and revised the rental license ordinance. And one of the changes that was made at that time, it was determined that we would no longer require a rental license for accessory dwelling units. Ultimately, it was determined they are part of that single family unit. They're always required to be attached, not in a detached structure. And so that was removed from that rental license requirement. As a part of that amendment in 2017, it was failed to bring the zoning code up to or in line with the rental license code. So as part of this request, we are just removing the requirement of an accessory apartment needing to have a rental license from the zoning code. So I'll reiterate, it's already been removed from the rental license code or title, which is under building regulations. So they've already removed the requirement for accessory apartments to need a rental license from that chapter. But so we're just removing that requirement from the zoning code section as well, so they both align. So with that, I'll certainly stand for any questions, but we'll leave the recommendation before you.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. Just to kind of reiterate here, the purpose for eliminating it is because the code already requires that accessory rental structures be attached to the principal dwelling.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's correct. So it was determined in 2017 when they did review the rental license ordinance that there was no need to have an additional accessory apartment license, as it is typically a part of that single family dwelling and not a separate dwelling unit on the site.
Thank you. Additional questions from the commission? Okay. Going once, going twice. Time we will open public hearing. Attendees may ask in one of two ways. Post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, to Commission and staff, and we will address the question accordingly. Use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I will then call on you by name to ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you will be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. With that, we will open the public hearing on this matter. I'm not seeing any takers on this. We'll give it one more minute. Okay, at this time, we will close public hearing for this matter. Do we have additional question or comment from the commission members? All right, at this time, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move to approve, Commissioner Britton.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Britton. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Frazier.
Second from Commissioner Frazier. And let me just make sure that I state this in its entirety here. All right. So we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Britton. We have a second from Commissioner Frazier. Additional question or comment? On the motion to approve, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to Director Boyke for roll call.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 7. Approval of Planning Commission minutes for May 18th, 2020. If there are no corrections, I would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve minutes from the meeting of May 2020 from Commissioner Bigham.
I have a motion to approve commission minutes for May 18th, 2020 from Commissioner Bigham. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Frazier.
Second from Commissioner Frazier. Additional comment on that? Okay. On the motion to approve, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to Director Boyke for roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Britton.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 8.1, recap of June City Council meetings.
All right, thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. So on the June 3rd council agenda, we had a couple items, one being the Planning Commission appointment of Jessica Fisher. As we can all see, Jessica is joining us tonight for her first meeting, so definitely want to send a welcome to her. She is in the real estate business as well, so can match wits with you, Tony, in regard to that. We did sit down with her last Friday, gave her kind of a rundown of the Planning Commission and what we do, and she seems very excited to join the group. So again, welcome, Jessica. Another item that was on the agenda was related to Eastbrook, the Eastbrook development, and that was for the Hadley Avenue deferred assessment. The second phase for that project was actually transferred to Gagne, who's the actual builder of phase 1 out there. So as part of that, the assessment owed for the Hadley Avenue project, the remainder was a new assessment was approved to transfer that payment or that assessment to Gagne. We also had the interim conditional use permit for T&T Fireworks out at High V, which was approved. If you may recall, there was a preliminary plat approved for Stony Brook Villas, which is on the northwest corner of Military and Keats. That developer is actually looking to sell. Donnie Holmes, who we have dealt with in the past, is planning to develop that site. So the request was to terminate that development agreement and plat, which council did on June 3rd. And finally, the High Point development, which the Planning Commission reviewed the preliminary plat earlier this year. If you may recall, that's the multifamily townhome development adjacent to Altman. The City Council approved the final plat and DA for that project so they can get started. Moving to the June 17th council meeting, a couple items on the agenda there. One being Northern Natural Gas, which was the conditional use permit, site plan review and zoning amendment that was reviewed by the Planning Commission in May. That's located on Old 70th in the vicinity of Keats Avenue. The council did approve that project, as well as the conditional use permit for AT&T for the Pine Hill Water Tower. That one was delayed because of the lease agreement, but ultimately was approved by council on June 17th. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Dennis for any updates he has.
All right. Well, thank you, Director Boyk. You always do a nice job of conducting that update for us. And good evening, everyone. Wanted to welcome everyone to summertime, and also our brand new member, Jessica Fisher, joining the team tonight. We're very happy to have you aboard. We've been working on things, and even though we're in the time period of COVID-19 and there's been certain areas of the economy that have slowed down a little bit, some of the things that have not slowed down are home building here in Cottage Grove. So we've got a very robust market continuing to happen. We're also working on, well, tomorrow morning, we've got a meeting for our convention bureau that I serve as chair of that commission. And then also working Thursday morning with the board of directors from the Chamber of Commerce for our monthly meeting there. So a lot of things are still in the works and happening. We continue to market and work toward, bringing opportunities here to our town, even in a little bit slower time. So I do want to take a moment to wish any of the gentlemen on the panel who are fathers a happy late Father's Day. I guess we're one day behind on that, but I myself had a wonderful day, spent some time with the family, and had a little bit of time off work, which is really good. And then before I open myself up to any questions, we do have the 4th of July coming up. I think everyone or most of you may have heard that we're not having the fireworks program in town this year. That was something that was decided by a combination, our public safety group, the Lions Club, and the mayor. And in essence, they wanted to make sure that we were respectfully following guidelines of gatherings that have been put out by the governor. So even though we're not having that event, we are looking forward to the potential or possibility of maybe doing something in the fall, which would be kind of a fun and unique thing to do and something to look forward to. So we'll see how that spins out. But either way, as always, I appreciate all of you putting in and volunteering here on behalf of the city. Everybody makes a difference to make our home be a better place. And then I would stand for any questions that you might have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. I'd like to congratulate Jessica Fisher again on your appointment. It's nice to have another real estate professional on here, maybe like Ben said, kind of challenge me a little bit on some of my opinions. And also, I think just having another woman's perspective is great to have on the commission. So we're happy to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get started, and yeah, I'm excited.
Right. And then Steve, thanks for all your hard work. It's a real bummer about fireworks, but I heard that we might get a Oktoberfest in lieu of that, so that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, and we'll see how that comes together, and we're hoping that by the time that by the time we get to that point that the governor will have turned his dials up a little bit more. It's a little bit disheartening to see some of the national reports coming out on COVID numbers. It appears there's a number of states that are edging back up again. But, we're going to keep our fingers crossed. And if it's any way possible that we can do something, the important thing is to be safe and respectful and do the things that are asked in order to make that difference. But, people like to live too. And it's an important thing to do that because we only have so much time. But again, it was a tough decision, just like it was to not have Strawberry Fest this year. That would have been just this very last weekend. But again, you kind of have to sometimes look to the long game, and if there's ways we can be safe now and get more people into the future so we can all do those things together and enjoy that time together, that to me is the right thing to do. So, but are there any other questions anyone may have on anything related to the council?
Going once, going twice. Members of the commission?
All right. Thank you very much. Everyone have a fantastic night.
You as well. Thank you very much, sir. All right. Item 8.2, response to planning commission inquiries. Can I check in with staff? Did we have any inquiries from our previous meeting that needed follow-up?
I should note, and I apologize to Commissioner Britton. He noted that in our staff reports to include a north arrow with some of the depictions we have in there, which I noticed after the packet was published that we failed to do that. So I apologize for that. I have it noted to make sure we include that at following meetings, but that was the only thing mentioned at the last meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Director. Let's move on to item 8.3. Does the commission have any requests for staff moving forward?
This is Commissioner Britton. No worries on the north arrow. Most of the maps were pretty reasonably oriented, so it didn't necessarily have as big of an impact on this map. So I appreciate you guys thinking about that in the future. One question that I have, and it might be too late for 80th Street because I saw curbs going in, but I don't know that they've ripped the trail up yet. One of the concerns that I've seen with the trails running along major collectors like 80th is that there's an inconsistency of where the trails terminate from side streets. So, for example, 80th and Joliet Avenue South versus 80th and 19, where County Road 19, where the trail intersects with it, the trail sweeps out towards the intersection so that when a car stops, they're not stopping right in the middle of where a crosswalk might be. Versus at Joliet, currently there's a car length and a half between the street and the trail where a car would have to stop before the trail potentially and then stop again at the street before they could go. So my question is, do we have some sort of standardization? I know County Road 19 is a county road, but as a city, what are our policies on that for these side streets coming up to the major roads that we can, hedge our bets and make things as safe as possible? A lot of drivers don't stop twice, so they're just going to stop at the main road and they're going to blow right past the trail. But as we redo these trails, if we can do like they did at 19 and like Indian and 19, where the trail connection where you cross the street is closer to the main road, could you provide me some feedback on that in some way?
Sure.
Not necessarily tonight, but
Yeah.
when it's convenient.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Britton, members of the council. We do have Amanda Meyer on the call. I don't know if Amanda has an answer for that. Amanda, can you chime in? If not, we can certainly bring back some information to the next meeting.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So in regards to 80th Street, that trail on the north side is planned to go back as it was existing. So those locations that you saw previously will remain. My understanding was, I believe when that trail was originally put in, there were, I think, some conflicts that required us to push some of those crossings a little bit further north away from 80th Street, which is why you see sort of that meandering trail at those intersections. In regard to a policy of how close those crossings typically are to, a main road, I would have to chat with our city engineer and public works director to see if we do have a standard policy that we typically try to follow. But I think, again, for 80th Street, when that trail was originally put in, my recollection is there were some conflicts with existing infrastructure that prohibited us from keeping that trail at a consistent distance off of the curb line.
Okay.
Thank you. And are they going to put a trail on the south side?
Yes, they will be.
Is that something that, I don't think they've even started on that yet, that you could consider? And as you look into it, if you could provide some feedback on what the county rules are, if there are any, and how they compare to what ours are, that would be helpful to help me understand what differences there may be. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Amanda Meyer, and thank you, Commissioner Britton. Any additional requests for staff? All right. And at this time, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion
Move
to
to.
adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Bigham. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Britton.
Second from Commissioner Britton. On the motion to adjourn the meeting, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll look to to Director Blake for a roll call.
All right, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Britton,
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Knable,
Aye.
and Chair Kambata.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.